Welcome back, it's your lousy Florida gardener. Welcome back to the garden. I'm going to talk to you today about bulbs, plant bulbs in specific. Bulbs are a really nice addition to the garden. They're something you can dig and move around and generally multiply. There are annual and perennial bulbs. I generally buy perennial bulbs. Every now and then I'll accidentally pick up an annual, but I have found here in Florida in our Zone 8B, a lot of these annual bulbs do come back. They do multiply. There's two ways you can buy bulbs. You can order bulbs online, which you usually have to order a year ahead to be shipped out to have them on time. That's the best way. I kind of get carried away. I walk in places like Walmart and Lowe's and find these packages that are cool, and I buy them. So a lot of times when they're available, it's not the right time of year to plant them. I found that I plant them at spring. I might not get nothing that first year, but a lot of times after that I do. So it don't really matter. Plant them when you got time if you're in Zone 8B, Florida. Some of these today that we're going to do are not going to be bulbs. They're going to be tubers. You may hear me accidentally refer to them as bulbs. Hard for me to stay focused. If you're going to plant bulbs, you need to determine how you're going to plant them. If you're going to plant them in a bed, if you're going to mix bulbs, there's a lot of characteristics involved in there. Bulbs, like many plants, have times of year for different varieties that they put on. So you need to put that in your thought if you're trying to blend them into your landscape. In other words, if you're going to do a bed of bulbs with different varieties, in laying that out, you need to keep in mind that some bulbs produce quicker than other bulbs, and some bulbs play out quicker than other bulbs. Some bulbs are taller than other bulbs. You wouldn't want a bulb that's going to come in early to block the view that you're getting to see from a bulb that's smaller because you accidentally planted it behind it. So you need to research that. Get you a piece of paper, kind of list them maybe by color as to how they are so that you can get a visual on what you want your bed to look like. I would suggest getting on the internet and looking up images of bulbs or going to some botanical gardens if you've never messed with bulbs and you're trying to get that awe-inspiring landscape. I generally am not. I generally am trying to get some bulbs in the ground. Here in Florida, I don't have to dig them. They'll come back, they'll produce. So even if I get them in the ground at the wrong time based on when I was able to get them or poor planning on my part, they'll still do good the next year or two. That's where that thing I was talking about, the patience. But if you want the optimum, you need to do that research and figure out what time of year you need to plant your bulbs. Because like I told you, most bulbs, if you're going to buy them in bulk, you buy them a year ahead and they ship them out that season. So it takes a little planning, a little time. I don't have that, so I buy my bulbs a lot of times when I can get them. I put them in the dirt. That works in Zone 8B. If you're in some of the more northern zones, that won't work for you because like I told you, you have to dig them up. I'm gonna plant these around these trees, so there's gonna be no really pattern. I got these, I forgot I had them. I gotta get them in the dirt. I really don't have a lot of time to plant. I don't want to lose them. They'll multiply. I can separate them later. So I'm going to plant them around this tree, and that's going to be a little different than planting a bed. The biggest thing to planting bulbs, you look on the back of these packages, and it tells you all your spacing and your sun requirements. Make sure you kind of go by that. You can tighten up them tolerances or expand them a little bit. Don't push it too far. You can plant these in beds, which is how they look better. I have lots of trees, so I utilize that. So I'm gonna show you how I plant them when I plant them around trees. Now, as far as winter storage for bulbs, here where we live in Zone 8, or where I live in Zone 8B, you don't have to dig bulbs up during the winter time. You just mulch them up, they die back, they come back every year. If you live above, you need to check on that. A lot of states up north, it gets too cold, bulbs will rot in the ground or die in the ground. You have to dig them up, store them over the winter. We don't have to do that here. We can leave them in the ground, leave them mulched, they come back every year. So if you decide you want to go with bulbs, you need to check on that for your area. If you're borderline states, I'd leave a few out here and there and try them. You'll find sometimes, depending on the area where you're at, that you can push those limits. What I have here is a different assortment. There's a bunch of different ones in here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plant them around these couple pine trees. No really pattern, I just want them to multiply where I can make some bigger beds maybe later on. I done started over there pulling that back. So we're gonna go over here and I'm gonna show you how to plant these. Now, if you were gonna plant a bed of these out somewhere, I would recommend, if you could get your hands on one or rent one, or if you have the funds to buy one, to use a tiller. You can ply your area up, lay out your space, and look at your plants and lay you a grid and design it how you want to. I'm doing around the tree. There's way too many roots for a tiller. I don't break all the ground up. Bulbs, unless you're trying to get them to really multiply and fluctuate, bulbs do well. I can dig me some holes at my spacing, mix you some compost and manure with those holes. Now, I have no compost and manure today. I'm not going to town, I'm off. One of them weekends where I just want to lay around. I have put some compost in this area before. We're gonna go ahead and plant these bulbs. Then I'm gonna show you how to come back maybe later on when I'm uptown. I'll get some cow manure. I'll show you how to side dress a bulb bed with some cow manure. For now, we're just gonna get our space and get them in the ground, get them watered in good. We got a storm coming. We're gonna get a lot of rain out of that, so I'm hoping to get them watered in. So come over here and let me show you what I'm talking about around this tree. Now, the first thing we're gonna plant is gonna be these dahlias. I've got two different types of these. They're annuals. I picked them up by mistake. On the back, it tells us that they need full sun. Nowhere on my place do I have full sun except for where my fruit trees are. And I could plant these over there, but I have a little bit of a deer problem, so I'm gonna try to plant them a little closer up to the front yard. It tells me on here they need to be 3 to 5 inches deep. So based on that, if you're gonna do a hole method, I would dig and soften my dirt down to about 10 inches to a foot, just to give them plenty of room. They're not gonna need that by no means, but I'd give them that. It tells us to space them 12 to 16 inches wide. Now, the diameter of my hole, if I were gonna plant them in holes like I'm gonna do here today, if it tells me it needs 5 inches deep, then I need to expect that it at least needs 5 inches from the root out, minimum. If I need maximum of 5 inches from the root, that means I need at least a 10-inch wide hole. I'm gonna go ahead and go with a foot wide hole. That'll give my bulb plenty of room to grow, and it'll do some expanding in that hole. So basically, since I'm gonna plant around this tree, I have 4 of these bulbs. I'm gonna plant 2 in one spot, 2 in the next, and then we're gonna do a different type bulb around it. So based on the fact that my holes need to be at least a foot wide, I'm just gonna dig me a 2-foot hole out, soften my dirt, backfill the hole, and then put my bulbs a foot apart, 18 inches apart. I'm gonna go a little wider. You can cheat a little bit, it ain't gotta be perfect. But if you don't have to, I wouldn't. Because the more room you give your bulbs, the better they're gonna do. In this bed, I got a couple African lilies that come back voluntarily. I'm not gonna dig them up, I'm gonna try to work around them. We're gonna put ourselves about right here, is where we want the center of our first row of bulbs. So come back, we know that our bulbs need at least 5 inches on each side to grow. I'm gonna come back about 6, 8 inches, come out 10 inches. And chop your dirt the width that you need for your plant spacing. Now at this point, I like to take my dirt and throw it over in my wheelbarrow as I'm digging it up, so that I can take me a good rake and soften it up good, and normally mix my manure into that with my rake. You want to get any little roots out of it. You don't want them interfering with your bulbs. Big roots, I don't tend to worry about a whole lot. I work around them. I've found that bulbs are pretty residual. I don't know that residual would be the right word, but when I'm planting around trees with bulbs or rhizomes, if I come across big roots, instead of cutting them, I don't want to damage my trees. I just work around them. I have no problem, it still does well. Smaller roots, I cut them, get them out of the way. Pretty much what I judge when it comes to roots, if I can cut it with a machete, I cut it around my trees. If it's bigger than that, I leave it. Believe it or not, about 3 or 4 years ago, I killed a tree by just cutting a root. So when it comes to bulbs around my trees, I have found that big roots don't really stand in my way that much. So I don't get too carried away about those. And let me show you this hole. In this hole, it's not perfect. There's some big roots here. That hole's probably not even quite a foot deep, but it's plenty enough for 2 bulbs. So working around your trees, don't get in there with a tiller and destroy all your big roots and kill your trees. Just dig you a decent hole. Bulbs do good. At this point, take your dirt that's in your hole that you put into your wheelbarrow, and you want to get your roots out of it that you dug up and different things. This is a good point to put in your manure, which normally I would. Today we're just going to chop this dirt up and get all the roots out of it and then put it back into our hole. The more better you chop this dirt, the better you're going to get something softer for your bulbs to grow in. Now, if you were going to put manure in it at this point, I would recommend at least 1/3 of manure equal to the dirt that you got. I have went as much as half here in this Florida sand. Don't really recommend half. It worked, but not as well. But it did help hold moisture. I didn't see the improvement in it to make it worth the extra expense of going half. So I usually use about 1/3. As you chop it, any kind of rocks or roots that you see, pull out. Normally, you would see more in a fresh piece of ground, but I have had something planted in this spot before. So we don't really have to work ours that hard. You may have to work that one harder. We're gonna dump our dirt back in our hole. You could just roll your wheelbarrow up there, I guess, and dump it in. I like to put it in by hand with my shovel. Just kind of sprinkle it in there so it'll be nice and soft, because I don't use a bulb planter. I push my bulbs in by hand. At this point, we've got our soil back in our hole. When I'm planting just individual bulbs like this and not a whole bed, I like to take my rake and the dirt that I just put back in, I like to kind of pull me up a little hill where I'm gonna put that bulb, and leave your dirt loose, don't pack it. And then take your rake and just lightly make you a flat spot on the top. Let me show you these bulbs we're fixing to put in here. I got 2 different types of dahlias. Kelvin Floodlight and Motto. You get a couple of them out of the bag. Now these have done started growing in the bag. Don't let that fool you. Now you can see, even though the bag says 2 bulbs, there's a cluster of bulbs there. Now you can see these have done started growing. That's not gonna hurt them. Don't let that deter you. They didn't accidentally give you this many bulbs. They knew what the chances was that some of them wouldn't produce because of the anatomy of a dahlia. You'll just have to look that up. Anyhow, on these we have eyes coming up, so we know where our eye is. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna dig a hole and we're gonna lay that dahlia in it sideways. We're gonna dig that hole about 6 inches deep. So we're gonna take these 2 dahlia bulbs. We're gonna open us up a hole about 6 inches deep and wide enough that we can lay that down in it with your growing eye out the side. We're gonna put another one right here. Same way with it. And then we'll just pull our dirt over. Now I like to shape up the edge of my bed right here just for my visual when I walk up to it. So when I put my mulch back, I'll put it lightly. And that just kind of gives me a reference eye of where it is. If you mulch your beds good later on, as the stuff, and especially with pine trees, as the stuff falls, you won't notice all that with the plants growing. Now I'm gonna just work my way around here and plant these other dahlias, and then we'll get to a different type bulb as we work our way around the tree. So we got our dahlias planted. For the record, dahlias, you hear me refer to them as bulbs, I just get kind of caught up, but those are actually tubers, what you call a tuber. So if you're gonna research some more information on them, you'll be looking for tubers. So let's move on around and I'll show you how to plant this other side. The next one we're gonna do is a canna lily. If you've watched my videos, you've seen the canna lilies that I have around. They're the nice green leaves with the two-tone orange flowers. These are a canna lily also. They got a purplish colored flower. I love these canna top lilies. I only have one variety so far. I bought a couple other varieties last year that I'm hoping is going to multiply, and I bought this year. Don't really remember picking this up. I'm like a kid in the candy store when I get around the bulb display. I just start grabbing. So I'm gonna plant these in this bed too, and they'll multiply, and then I can transfer them out into other beds. You don't have to have a pile of money to get started. You just buy a few of something if you have patience and you're doing it for enjoyment. Plant them right, put the time and care into them, and they'll multiply. It won't be long. You'll have more than you know what to do with, and you can separate them out. Now these tell us they need full sun, 12 to 18 inches apart, 2 to 4 inches deep. So pretty close to about what we just planted the dahlias that we planted. So we're gonna do the same thing with these and plant these the same way. I'm not gonna make you watch me plant all of this stuff, because the ones that's pretty much in the same way that you plant it, I'm gonna get it planted, then I'll show you the finished bed, and that way in our videos now, you'll have the idea of how to plant these bulbs and tubers. And you can follow along in our walkthroughs throughout the year and see how they're doing. The wrong time of year that I'm planting them, so they may not do well this year. They may come up and look spindly, they may not come up at all. We'll check on them in every tour, but then you'll see what I'm talking about patience. What I'm gonna do with these canna lilies, I also have some city-aligned clematis. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. So since I got 3 of these and I'm gonna plant them 2 foot wide, I got 1 of these. I'm gonna plant this in with these. Now these canna tubers, mine has drawed a little moisture from somewhere, but you can see it's trying to grow. They're pretty forgiving when you buy your tubers like this. I have found these will grow. You get them in the dirt, they'll grow. You get the water tool. Dig you about a 4-inch down hole in your dirt that you've softened up and put back. Lay your tuber in it. If it's got the piece on it, even if it's broke or it's not broke, don't worry about that. Canna lily, Wyoming. Around this same tree, we're also gonna plant this clematis and this bleeding heart. Clematis, I don't know how to pronounce that. You just have to look that up. It comes in a plug. Let me show you. You can see where it started growing out at some point. I hope it didn't get moisture and ruin in the pack. That may be what happened. We're gonna plant it anyway and see. I never planted no plugs out of a pack like this. Anyhow, we're gonna plant it and see. Now that we got our bulbs in, we're gonna remulch around this tree. When I plant my bulbs around a tree like this, I don't like to put my mulch stick over my bulbs. I generally try to put it around them. More for just aesthetics. I got enough mulch around the outside to keep some moisture. And then as they come up and get thicker, you can add what you want. I like to I don't know that it's the right way, but I just shake my mulch instead of dropping it on everything wide open, so it ain't compacted. If you're using cypress mulch, same principle, but you don't shake it out. I'd take it out of my bag, sprinkle it around my beds, leaving my hills exposed till you get your stuff up. So that's pretty much all there is to it. Now we'll water them in. Next time I go to town, I'll get some cow manure. I'll pull this back, put that cow manure around them. Probably wait till they start popping up, since I didn't put it in the soil when I planted them. Anyhow, I appreciate y'all joining me. Now these bulbs, I wasn't able to get at the right time, and then after I got them, I forgot I had them, and they're trying to grow out of the bag. I got to get them in the dirt or lose them. Most of these bulbs are perennials, with the exception of, I think, 2 bags of dahlias. They're annuals. I don't know if they'll come back or not. I've never planted any dahlias, but we're gonna see. We'll plant them and see if they come back every year. Some annuals do in this area. I don't expect a lot out of these, because most of these should have been in the ground at late fall for some early spring. But I got to get them in the ground. I mean, it's either that or lose them. So I expect this year for them to grow sparsely and not really do that much. They may grow good as far as the green, but I don't expect a whole lot of flowering. But next year, they'll be established. They'll probably multiply a little bit this year. Next year, they should look spectacular. So in addition to the tree that we just put some bulbs around, I dug just 4 trenches here, put some bulbs down in it. We're going to use that just to watch, and we'll see what they do throughout the year. Just some extra ones I had. I'm going to come back and throw some mulch over the top of this. As that grass comes through it, I'll show you how to get rid of that grass. The easy, simple one. I got a lot going on. Trying to rush, get some stuff in the ground. We're going to have some better videos, a little more detail, and look at some bulbs in detail later on. I've had a lot going on, so I'm just trying to get the touch basics there. But we will slow down here in a little bit, and I'll show you in a lot more detail about some different plants.